UFC Vegas 95 only has 10 fights, which means we have to be very careful when building our 6-fighter lineup for DraftKings Fantasy. My name is Angelo. This is We Want Picks, and I'm going to break down the entire UFC Vegas 95 fight card, giving you my picks, predictions, and DraftKings plays. Before we jump in, let's take a look at the wild success that our community has had playing DraftKings Fantasy. Over $600,000 in winning DraftKings Fantasy tickets from our premium member community. This is over the last 6 months or so, a little bit of a year, if you wish. And the success is wild. It is unmatched. It is unrivaled. This is not an accident. These people only pay $10 an entire month for access to all the tools, the data, the insight, the optimizer that builds lineups for you, and they are taking home some very real money. Here's a look at that optimizer. This optimizer will build DraftKings fantasy lineups for you. A couple clicks of the button, it'll spit some lineups out. It is preloaded every Friday afternoon with the full ownership projections, and those ownership projections on a card like this with only 10 fights are wildly important. Not only do you need to pick the right fighters for your lineups, you need to separate yourself from the pack and get that optimal lineup. Every single thing on our website can be unlocked instantly for $10 a month. That's all the bets, all the picks, the artificial intelligence, the entire suite of DraftKings fantasy tools, FanDuel tools as well. $10 a month. WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member at the top. The greatest value in this space. If you unlock it for UFC Vegas 95, you already have access to UFC 305, and I've got some bets on the board there for that card already. Here's another look at one of the other things that we offer for DraftKings Fantasy called the Slate Sleuth. You're going to get full breakdowns, full insight, everything you need heading into a fight week. Let's go ahead and break down this card specifically. There's only 10 fights. DraftKings says 12. That's because 2 canceled fights. They just left on here for some reason. But we're going to start at the bottom and work our way to the top. Opening up the UFC Vegas 95 fight card, we have a rematch. And you're not going to see any data here because their first fight took place on the Contender Series. And if you didn't know, Contender Series is not the UFC. It's in the cage. They share staff. It's in UFC's building. It's not the UFC. It's a completely different promotion with different contracts, and they don't have a deal with DraftKings. Therefore, they don't have DraftKings Fantasy for Contender Series. All of that being said, this is a rematch. We got Stephanie Luciano taking on Talita Alencar. Stephanie Luciano is a busy come-forward striker. She's just going to move forward. She's got cardio for months. She's going to stay in your face, close the distance, potentially work in a takedown or two if she can. She's never going to quit. She's never going to slow down. She's not going to get tired. And she's coming off of that draw against Talita Alencar, who her opponent is. Talita Alencar, let's go to her, is a world champion grappler, a phenomenal, insane grappler. And this fight, as I mentioned, is a rematch. In their very first fight, Talita Alencar came forward, got a couple of takedowns, won the first 2 rounds, got exhausted, and got the shit kicked out of her in the 3rd round. And Stephanie Luciano won that 3rd round by so much, it was a 10-8 3rd round. So Talita won 2 rounds, lost the last round very badly, and it called the fight a draw. And you can look at this in a couple of different ways. We got Talita Alencar, world champion grappler. She had some success getting Stephanie down in the first fight, but she went 4 for 24 in takedown attempts. So didn't have a ton of success, and I don't know if that's repeatable success. But she did win 2 rounds and was going to win the fight if she had a little more cardio and didn't get the shit beat out of her in that 3rd round. But Stephanie Luciano showed she doesn't quit. She doesn't give up on herself. She'll continue to move forward. She was down 2 rounds, didn't care. Continued moving forward, continued throwing punches, continued looking for that finish. Didn't find the finish, but did save herself from a loss. I think Stephanie Luciano wins this fight because I think the momentum was obviously in her direction. I think she's, first of all, enormous for this weight class. I think she can defend the takedowns, more of the same from last fight. I think she can stay tough. And Talita hasn't shown us that she's that person yet. She's coming off this win. Okay, you beat Ryan Dos Santos. You landed fewer than 40 strikes and only had 1 takedown. Her grappling, while amazing outside of the octagon, isn't what we would hope it would be inside of the octagon. I got to fade both of these women. Certainly, if Talita wins this fight, she could do so with some takedowns, some control time, maybe a submission. I don't see any of that happening. I think we have kind of a back and forth striking match, essentially, because I don't think Talita gets the takedowns, and I think Stephanie just sort of pieces her up. Neither one of those will score very well in DraftKings Fantasy. We got to be careful with how many fights we fade, because there's only 10 fights. There's only 20 fighters. 6 of them go in our lineup. So 25% of these fighters, essentially, go in our lineup. Then we have Youssef Zalal taking on Jarno Errens. Youssef Zalal, you're going to look at his UFC record. Wow, dude has 1 win in his last 5 UFC fights. And that's because he's had sort of a interesting rise. He came into the UFC in 2020, had some success against lower level type guys. They immediately were like, here's Ilia Topuria, here's Sang-Woo Choi, here's Sean Wood. Like, here's 3 really tough dudes while you're still sort of early in your career. And then he had that draw with Blackshear. And there was some come from behind in that. There was a 10-8 in that, which forced the draw. And then he went to the regional scene, beat the hell out of some non-UFC people. They brought him back on short notice into the UFC back in March, and he just dominated Billy Quarantillo. Just dominated that dude. So all of a sudden, it's like, okay, Youssef Zalal is very good. He is very talented and just had, a really tough slate of opponents for a while there. He was touching up Ilia Topuria on the feet, which is why Ilia had to go to the wrestling. All this being said, Youssef Zalal is a dangerous guy. He's not dangerous in that he's going to come here. You got to watch out for the power. He's dangerous in that he has high fight IQ, and he will not make mistakes. He'll stay on the outside. He'll piece you apart at range. Then he'll sneak in a takedown when he needs it. So Youssef Zalal, I am very confident that he wins this fight. The problem is, I don't know what he's going to score. If we look at his first 3 UFC fights, all decisions. He is sort of a decision guy because of that high fight IQ. He didn't score very well. 69 points in a decision. This could look exactly like that because Jarno Errens is very tough. So Youssef might stay on the outside, avoid danger, maybe get a takedown or 2. Obviously, he scored well in his last fight against Billy Q because of the submission. But if we look at Jarno Errens, yes, he has 1 win in the UFC, and he was a big underdog here. That was against Steven Win. Steven blew it. The joke I made after that is he is now Steven Loss. And nothing like a dad joke to really round out UFC fight breakdowns. Anyway, Jarno Errens is tough. He's a tough dude. His striking is solid. He has some takedowns when he needs them. He is primarily a striker, though. He's going to move forward. He'll dictate that striking pace. He'll work the body. He'll come to the head. Every single thing he throws, whether it's a punch, a kick to the head or to the body, is with 100% intent. I do think he loses, though. And I think he loses the same way Gomez beat him. Just being smart, slowing the pace, not getting into a slug fight with Jarno Errens. So Youssef Zalal wins this fight. And we got to be careful how many people we fade, but he's very expensive, and I don't think he's going to score that well. But let's keep him in our back pocket because ultimately you need winners. We do have a phenomenal price on Chris Gutierrez coming up in a little bit, but let's keep him in our back pocket. Very confident he wins. One of my most confident picks on this card. Then we have Karl Williams taking on Jhonata Diniz. This is a fight that has evoked some emotions from the community. I don't know why. I don't know why the comment people and the community in general latch themselves on to random fighters and then just are willing to die on a hill. And the hill that they're willing to die on this week is that Jhonata Diniz smokes Karl Williams, and Karl Williams can't take him down. And I don't know why, like that very vocal group of people are just insisting that Karl Williams can't get this fight to the ground. Show me a fight where he couldn't get it to the ground. This Chase Sherman fight's the closest thing you're going to get, and he didn't really attempt takedowns in that fight. I left that fight being like, what the hell's wrong with you? Shoot more. But then he came out, he fought a really tough striker who was supposed to have good takedown defense in Justin Taffa, smoked that dude. 7 takedown, 12 minutes control time, 117 points on the board. And this fight could look exactly like this. It could look exactly like this. He scores really well. The only fight he didn't score well in was the Chase Sherman fight where he didn't wrestle as much as he should have. And he's fighting a dangerous striker in Jhonata Diniz. So he's going to wrestle. He's going to wrestle his ass off. It'd be crazy not to. Jhonata Diniz is a good striker, clean technique. He's got incredible power, and he throws in combinations. So Karl Williams is going to shoot takedowns. We watched Jhonata Diniz get taken down against Austin Lane, who sucks. You got to go Karl Williams here. I don't understand. If you're one of the Jhonata Diniz fanboys that are in the comment sections insisting, well, it's not going to be that easy, Karl Williams. Maybe I'll look stupid. These are fist fights and anything can happen, but Comment on this video and let me know why you are so positive that Jhonata Diniz is going to win this fight. What did you see in Karl Williams that tells you he won't be able to take Jhonata down when we watch trash Austin Lane take him down? I don't get it. I can understand the criticism. Karl Williams is a boring wrestler. He can't finish anybody. Yeah, that's all valid. I agree. Jhonata Diniz is the way more dangerous of the two. He's not dangerous off his back, and that's where he's going to be. Karl Williams is the pick, $9,000. I will spend that money in my DraftKings lineup. Then we got a couple of ladies. We got Karol Rosa taking on Pannie Kianzad. We got to be careful how many people we freaking fade here, but this has fade written all over it. Karol Rosa, even in a fight against, yes, it was a loss, and if you add 30 to it, it scores really well, 112 points if you add 30 to it. But even in a fight where she landed 204 significant strikes, literally 204 strikes. I'm going to go on a little rant here. There is a human being. The way they record strikes and significant strikes, there's a human with a clicker that's like click, click, click. That was significant. That wasn't. A human that just decides what's significant and what isn't. And the reason I'm talking about this is because that can affect things. If the person that's clicking on at UFC Vegas 95 and the person who's clicking at UFC 305 are not the same person, there's going to be very different interpretations of what's significant and what isn't. And in Karol Rosa's last fight, the person said 100% of the strikes that she landed, she didn't land a single soft jab. Every single strike Karol Rosa landed was significant. But then the person who scored her fights against Santos, about half are significant. It's always bizarre. I was on Josh Thompson's podcast, the Weighing In podcast. He lives near me. I know him. He texted me saying, hop on. I'm doing a live stream. And I mentioned this. And I said, do you know how that works? And he was like, of all of my years, if you don't know Josh Thompson, like at one point in time, he was one of the best on planet Earth for a while. I think he's the only person to ever finish or TKO Nate Diaz. And all of the years of fighting and being around the sport, he works for Bellator and all these. He's like, I've never seen the clicker guy. I don't know where he sits. I've never seen the clicker guy. He might not even be in the arena. And the reason I'm going on this long rant is it matters. Because if we get the same clicker guy from the last fight, well, then Karol Rosa at $8,600 makes a ton of sense. She almost covered that salary in a loss. But if we get the clicker guy from the fight before that thing, only half of these are significant. Well, all of a sudden, we're not going to necessarily get that salary covering performance. 73 points in a decision win. I think this is a decision win against Pannie. And I think if she throws 200 strikes and they're all deemed significant, she is going to be well worth that $8,600. But if they just, only half of those are significant, just a portion of them, all of a sudden she might not get to that salary. I think Karol Rosa wins this fight. You got to be careful about the lineup. She's taking on Pannie Kianzad. Pannie Kianzad, I will argue, is the better striker of the two, but she's mostly a boxer. She's a clean boxer. She's a pure boxer. She'll never throw one punch at a time. Everything's in combinations. Great footwork. Nice and fast. She can outstrike most people. I think she will be the better striker in this matchup, but I don't think she wins. Because ultimately, Karol Rosa is going to bomb. She's going to move forward. She's going to stay in her face. She's going to be busy, and she's going to work in takedowns. On paper, Pannie's got decent takedown defense at 66%, but it did fail her in that last fight. Macy Chesson got it to the ground, ended up submitting her, and my round line over bet got absolutely smoked. Pannie Kianzad is a fade no matter what. Even at $7,600, if she wins, she's a fade. Look what she did. Lena Landsberg is one of the best performances she's had, and she only scored 81 points. And certainly, if you spend $7,600 on her and she scores 81, that is fantastic. But in that fight, she was $9,100. She's quite literally never even covered her salary. Pannie's a good fighter. I like Pannie. I root for Pannie. She's busy. She's tough. She's missing teeth. All of it. But she just is not a DraftKings fantasy play. If we work our way up this card, that takes us to Charalampos Grigoriou taking on Toshiomi Kazama. Listen, guys, sometimes it's about the fighter, right? That last breakdown I made about Karol Rosa and how many strikes she can land and what she can do. Other times, it's about the opponent. This is one of those fights. This is more about the opponent than it is against Grigoriou. You could say, well, Grigoriou's winless in the UFC. Guy hasn't won a single fight in the UFC. How could you be confident in this man? He has no wins in the UFC. Style-wise, he's a powerful striker. He's got heavy leg kicks. He will chop down that tree, meaning he will blast your leg until you can't move well, and then he'll come up top and try to knock you out. Solid prospect. He can win fights both on the feet and on the ground. He did lose to Chad in his UFC debut, where the striking wasn't really getting going, but the wrestling did. And again, you might say this guy's winless in his UFC career. But let's take a look at who he's fighting. He's fighting Toshiomi Kazama. Sometimes it's just about who you're fighting. Toshiomi Kazama's not good. He's not very good. His grappling is okay. He's an okay grappler. He'll let his hands go on the feet. He'll just bomb away, moving forward. His takedown defense sucks. When he gets taken down, yeah, there's some BJJ there, but I don't think it's going to matter here. He is a grapple-first guy, but if he can't get his grappling going, he's going to get TKO'd by Garrett freaking Armfield. The Nakamura, okay, Nakamura is very good. Garrett Armfield, no offense, Garrett. He spends more time focusing on memes than he does cleaning things up. Toshiomi Kazama is not very good. Toshiomi Kazama likely loses and gets finished. Grigoriou at $8,800. Even if it's a decision, I imagine there's going to be a whole bunch of wrestling. Probably a finish. Grigoriou is going to be the pick, and you know, let's put it this way. If I got to spend $8,800 on Grigoriou, or spend the $94 on Youssef, I'll save the $600 and probably go Grigoriou, even though I'm more confident in Youssef, and Youssef's the better fighter, just because that's how scoring is going to work out. Also, use the optimizer, this optimizer on the website that builds lineup for you. This will be preloaded with the ownership projections. Let the optimizer make some lineups for you. Take a look. And if you like those lineups, great, use them. If you don't, that's fine. And in the settings here, you can dictate who you want exposure to, who you don't want exposure to. You can remove fighters while building it. So mess around with the optimizer and let that build some lineups for you, especially in a card like this when you have some weird price points and stuff like that. Then we have Yana Santos taking on Chelsea Chandler. Yana Santos, 0-3 in her last 3. She is on that 3-fight skid. She is married to Macheta Santos. Tiago. The reality is she's an accurate kickboxer. She is a high volume striker, right? 95 significant strikes in that last fight against Karol Rosa. She's an accurate striker. She'll stay busy, high volume. She'll land around 4 significant strikes per minute. Does not have power. She's not really knocking anybody out anytime soon, but she'll mix things up. She'll move forward, plenty of cardio, all those things. She can't really find her footing in her last couple of fights, but all right, the Aldana loss is quality, Holly Holmes quality. These are quality losses, and that's why she's a favorite here, because her wins are good, her losses are good, and she's fighting Chelsea Chandler, who's unproven. Right? Chelsea Chandler beat Josiane Nunes in one of the sloppiest fights you're ever going to see in your life, but she did get a couple of takedowns. The Stoliarenko win, that looked good in the UFC debut. Okay, here we go. What's she going to do? And then Norma Dumont lost. Norma is very, very good, but Chelsea literally was turned into a meme by running away. Chelsea Chandler, I think, wins this fight because she's just so damn big. She's huge. She is big for this weight class, which is the biggest weight class they offer for women. I think she just moves forward, leans on Yana, holds her against the cage, works in a takedown or two. Yana does not have the one-punch knockout power. Chelsea kind of does. We've seen it on the regional scene. She's also big. She's lumbering. She can slow down the pace, lean on you, be heavy. So Yana Santos can win this fight. She's supposed to win this fight. She's the favorite. But she can win this fight if she dances around the outside and plays a technical game moving, getting just Chelsea to chase her around. But if Chelsea gets a hold of her, holds her against the cage, leans on her, weighs on those arms, Chelsea should take over. I think Chelsea wins this fight. I wish I was going to get a better price than $7,800 in DraftKings Fantasy, but I might throw her in my lineup. Because when she wins, she scores pretty well. The Nunes fight was sloppy bullshit, but she still put up 84 points. And obviously, the Stoliarenko finish scored really well. I don't think she's going to finish here. But I think Chelsea wins, and I will probably think about having her in my lineup. Then we got Chris Gutierrez taking on Quang Lee. Listen, we got a gift. Not every week. How many weeks have we been screwed where a fight is dropped after lineups are locked? And we're fucked. We're screwed. We can't rebuild. It's too late. This card started and the fight dropped. And there's a 0 in our lineup. And sometimes we get gifts. And this is one of those gifts. If you don't know, DraftKings will establish, usually on Mondays, sometimes Sundays, if it's a big event, They'll establish the fights for that card and they'll assign prices to every fighter. This week, when they locked it all in on Monday, they said Chris Gutierrez is a big underdog. He's fighting Javid Bajarat. Well, we'll set his price at $7,000. That's a very low price. And then Javid dropped. And now Chris, who is a massive underdog, gets a brand new opponent. And now in real life, he's a massive favorite. But DraftKings doesn't go back and reprice these fighters. I don't know why. I literally don't know why they don't. Like, that fight dropped. Who cares? Like, I'm glad they don't, but I don't know why they don't. And if you heard that wild noise in the background, my old fat ass dog is just passed out next to me, snoring his ass off. Anyway, Chris Gutierrez at $7,000 is a gift from the gods. We got it. He's going to be in the lineup. I'm very curious to see when we drop our ownership projections, what his ownership is going to look like. It's going to be, you're going to need him in your line. Like, the ownership on him, it might be the highest we've ever seen ever. A minus 550 favorite at $7,000 in DraftKings. You got to have him in your lineup. Ultimately, he's a very good striker with powerful leg kicks. He will light your legs up and then come up top. He scores okay. He doesn't score insanely well, but we're getting him at $7,000. If he was priced at the $9,400 favorite, well, that would be different. But at $7,000, you got to have him in your lineup. He is taking on Quang Le, UFC debut, short notice. Quang Le was supposed to fight in the Contender Series in a couple of weeks. And he got the upgrade. They said, guess what, pal? You're coming into UFC. Quang Le's decent. He's not incredible. He's not awful. Contender Series made a lot of sense for him. He's stepping up on short notice, as I mentioned. He's a striker. He's got that Muay Thai stance with the rolled shoulders. Plots forward. He'll find his range with kicks. He'll hang out on the outside of the pocket. Not really a lot of offensive wrestling, but he does have some slick BJJ if he ends up on the ground. He's a good fighter, but I do believe this is just too much too soon, and I think Chris Gutierrez is going to run right through him. Then we have Danny Barlow taking on Nikolay Veretennikov. People love Danny Barlow. Danny Barlow is a guy that for some reason, let me back up. No, I'm not going to say for some reason. I understand why. But Danny Barlow is a guy that the community has decided he's the man. When I say the community, I mean people commenting on the videos. I don't know what the non-commenters think because they don't tell us. But the commenters have been like, Danny Barlow is a lock. Danny Barlow is that guy. Danny Barlow is the future. He's incredible. He's amazing. And he might be, right? That's what you get with an undefeated guy. He might be. That 8-0 might end up being 30-0. Or he could be 8-1. Danny Barlow is a rangy striker. He's very fast. He has some very real power. He wants to work at range, but he will come into that pocket with some lead uppercuts and hooks. He carries that power late. He just finished Josh Quinlan in the 3rd round, which is always impressive to see. I'd rather see a late finish than a quick early first round finish. So Danny Barlow is very, very good. We know all of that. He's very good. And he is fighting a short note-ish guy in, see what I did there? I didn't say notice. I said note-ish. Because it was short notice, but like, So short note-ish. It wasn't 2 days. It wasn't a month. Right somewhere in between. That was clever. Nikolay Veretennikov is a powerful striker. He's an aggressive striker. He has twice the amount of experience in MMA than Danny Barlow has, and then a whole bunch of non-MMA experience in striking. He's not going to be more technical than Danny is, but he might be just as tough. He's going to move forward. He's going to stay in your face. He's not afraid of a firefight. He throws huge hooks. He launches right hands. He's durable, and he has no problem just planting his feet and scrapping with you. I think this is a big test for Danny, and I think we learn a lot about Danny in this fight. I'm picking Danny to win because I think he's the more technical guy, and certainly he's not the short note-ish guy. But Nikolay is good, and I don't think people are giving Nikolay enough credit. I think people are just looking at Danny Barlow's last win and then making snap judgments, this guy's the future. And he looked good, and he might be the future. But his last win was over a guy who hasn't won since USADA knocked on his door. That win isn't what people say it is. So I'm going to watch this fight. This is a fade for me. And if you believe Danny Barlow is the next guy, he's Peyton Talbot, then throw him in your lineup. Don't let me convince you otherwise. I'm just telling you why I'm just going to wait and see. This is a really, really tough opponent. Danny Barlow's relatively unproven. At that price point, I just got to leave it alone. He's the most expensive fighter on the card. Danny Barlow's is he the most expensive? He's the second most expensive fighter on the card. No, thank you. Then we have Chepe Mariscal taking on Damon Jackson. This is another interesting fight. Chepe Mariscal, $9,100. And it all makes sense. Everything makes sense on paper. Chepe the favorite makes sense on paper. Chepe, $9,100 in DraftKings makes sense on paper. So I'm going to walk you through why Chepe should be the favorite. I understand he's the favorite, but also it's a little weird sometimes. Chepe, this is the first time ever that he's a favorite. You can see he opened a short notice Trevor Peak, $8,000. That's a dog price. Jack Jenkins, $7,500. That's a dog price. Morgan Charrier, $7,900. That's a dog price. And he is 3-0 as an underdog in the UFC. But if we go through this, Trevor Peak sucks. Chepe dogged him. Jack Jenkins broke his arm in that fight. Doesn't suck. He doesn't suck. But he broke his arm. He did break his arm because Chepe took him down, but okay. And then Morgan Charrier, a lot of people think Morgan won that fight. Chepe Mariscal is good. He has collegiate wrestling background. He can strike with everybody. He's got good jiu-jitsu. He's good at everything. He's good at everything, and he's insanely tough. That is why he's the favorite. I believe he should be the favorite. I think that all makes sense. I do worry, though. Like, how many fights is he going to win? How many fights is he going to win? Is he just going to continue to win? Because he had 6 losses in real life. He hasn't lost yet in the UFC. But how many fights is Chepe going to win? And it just feels like this is based off nothing. It just feels like when we get these guys on these streaks and then they finally become that big favorite. And it should be it should be on paper like, oh, finally, Chepe has a fight that everybody agrees he should win. Feels like those are the ones that a lot of these fighters lose. And this is a small cage. And that might matter because Damon Jackson is a high IQ guy who likes to wrestle. Damon Jackson should also reach out to DraftKings and be like, yo, I fixed the hairline. Swap my picture, dude. What the fuck is this? I fixed my hairline. Get this right. That's not what I look like now. He should do that. He did fix the hairline. And then he came out against Alex Hernandez, physically looked the best he's ever looked, and did quite well in that fight. 3 takedowns, over 6 minutes of control time. The striking looked much better than it normally does. His striking was clearly improved. He did get dropped in the 3rd round, which is always concerning. But Alex Hernandez has way more power than Chepe does. I think Chepe wins this fight. But Damon Jackson is a high IQ guy. He is a smart guy. And if he entertains his striking for the perfect amount of time and then bang, starts wrestling. He has takedowns in basically every single fight except Dan Ige, where he was beat pretty bad. But Dan Ige is at a different level. The Billy Quarantillo fight, he didn't win the fight, but he had 3 takedowns. That was a close fight. 3 takedowns, 6 minutes of control time. Alexander Hernandez, 3 takedowns, 6 minutes of control time. It could look like that. I am on the Chepe side. But if I'm messing with the salaries here and I got to find my spots, I think Damon Jackson is a great dog at $7,100. Again, Chepe should win. Chepe, frankly, should be better everywhere. Should be a little bit of a better wrestler. He might not have better jiu-jitsu, but he's got very good jiu-jitsu. Definitely the better striker. Certainly tougher. So Chepe is the pick. I'm saying Chepe wins. But if I have a lineup to build and I'm working with a budget, Damon Jackson at $7,100 isn't the worst thing that I've seen. And then we have the main event of the evening. This is a rematch. Let's go backwards. Let's go back in time. Sergey Spivac lost to Marcin Tybura, only scored 13 points in that fight. And that's because he was getting taken down. He was getting controlled. It was early in his UFC career. It was only his 3rd fight in the UFC. People pointed out he hadn't filled out into a full-grown man just yet. He only weighed like 230 in that fight. Now he's weighing in at 260-ish. And I get all of those things. And Sergey Spivac has gone on to get a couple of quality wins. What I will never get out of my brain, though, is this win over Alexei Olenek. That is quite literally the worst fight I have ever seen. They were awful. I've never seen sloppier takedowns. I've never seen sloppier striking. It was literally the shittiest fight I've ever seen in my life. And maybe that's why I'm picking against Sergey, is I just can't get that out of my head. All I see is this man flopping around looking horrendous. He went out. He lost to Tom Aspinall in the fight after that, which, okay, everybody has lost to Tom Aspinall so far. And then he beat Dan Hardy, who blows, beat Sakai. Sakai's not terrible, but was able to get him to the ground. Beat Derek Lewis with 6 takedowns. Took 6 takedowns in 1 round to beat Derek Lewis. And then obviously he just got smoked by Cyril Gane. Sergey Spivac is good. He's evolving, but if he doesn't get takedowns, he doesn't have a lot of success. And it's going to be hard for him to get takedowns here because he's fighting Marcin Tybura. Marcin Tybura is basically Sergey Spivac, but older and I think tougher. That's it. They're basically the same guy, except Marcin Tybura is tougher and older. He's a come-forward guy. He's a grinder. Doesn't have big one-punch knockout power, but he'll stay in your face. He'll stay busy, and he's not going to quit. Sure, Tom Aspinall finished him. Fine. Decision with Volkov. This Romanov fight is everything you need to know about his toughness. Got his ass kicked in the first round. Getting picked up, tossed, thrown all over the place. Went back to his corner. Reset with his ridiculous haircut. Came back out. Won the rest of that fight. Won that fight because he had plenty of cardio. Doesn't quit on himself. Continues moving forward. Marcin Tybura is good. He's a grinder who will come forward, look to get the fight to the ground, and work from there. He doesn't really have a bad loss. These are quality losses. At least at the time. Okay, he lost to Sakai in 2019. Abu Karimakov, you can tell by that last name how that fight went. Derek Lewis, when Derek Lewis was Derek Lewis. Fabricio Verdum, not far removed from his UFC belt. These are quality losses. Marcin Tybura is a proven entity who has already won this fight. He is 38 years old, which is concerning. Sergey Spivac is bigger than they were in the first fight, but I think Marcin Tybura can do a little bit more of the same. It's always tricky with heavyweights in DraftKings Fantasy. Obviously, the way he beat Tuivasa, he scored those points. I don't think he's going to submit Sergey Spivac. So this might look like the Ivanov or the Romanov fights where he's scoring very little. I'm probably going to fade the main event. Unless you feel there's a finish. These guys don't really score particularly well. Marcin Tybura is going to be the pick in this fight. My dog agrees with me. He's barking in the background saying, go Ange, let's get this done. Guys, that is the breakdown. Check out the DraftKings Optimizer that's winning people money. Check out the Slate Sleuth. Check out the ownership projections and join this community of people who have won over $600,000 in the last year playing DraftKings Fantasy using our tools. WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member. It's only $10 for an entire month. And that $10 is not just for DraftKings. You're going to get the bets. You're going to get the picks, the artificial intelligence. You're going to get FanDuel content, Prize Picks, Underdog. Everything you could want or need in one single package. $10 for an entire, no stupid tiers. Listen, if you're watching somebody else and they're trying to sell you something, fine. Everybody's trying to feed their families in this world. I get it. But if they're offering you a Patreon, Patreon's the easiest shortcut to please give me money. Patreon's bullshit. There's no tools. It's just a list. Patreon sucks. If you did come across somebody that has their own website, what's on that website? Is it all the tools that we have? Is it betting and DFS? Do they have multiple pricing tiers? Oh, for my betting content, it's 10. For the DFS, it's another 10. But combined, it's 15. Okay, so you're already paying more. And there's weird tiers and packages. Oh, for other sports, do you want women's tennis? It's a joke. We have established the greatest value in this space, period, end of story. Everything from copy-paste bets, copy-paste picks, artificial intelligence, to actual tools that you can use. WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member at the top and unlock everything you need for an entire month. UFC 305 is next week.